the practice director here for Connected Systems in the Midwest region. I've been in the EI space for about 19 years in the Midwest region, right? So Chicago and an extended Midwest, probably from South Dakota, maybe all the way to Pennsylvania, is how far I've worked. And a lot of the individuals I see here, I worked with you in the past. So hello to everybody that has already worked with me, and I'll be excited to work with the rest of you, hopefully in the near future. So over the last 19 years, right, so I've seen almost all incarnations of BizTalk, starting from 2002, so I missed BizTalk 2000, and I've seen BizTalk go from using Visios to create orchestrations all the way to BizTalk 2013 now, which is a very robust EAI and ESV tool that provides very powerful capabilities on message transformations and message routings. And it is available now in Azure environment too. And we're going to talk about BizTalk Services today mostly, which is probably an extension of BizTalk 2013. And we'll talk about BizTalk Services in Azure and how it supports EDI and EAI, right? So B2B and EAI overall probably are used very loosely, and how these definitions are. What I'll do is I'll define those when we get to that point so that there are no ambiguities, right? So we have some light but practical scenarios that we developed so that we're able to make this webinar a little meaningful, so you can see BizTalk Services in action. I'll try to keep this as interactive as possible so that I make this as pertinent to the audience that is right here in front of us, right? So you will see questions that'll pop up as polls, and if you don't mind looking at the right responses and responding, I'll be able to tailor this to the audience that is in front of me. So so please feel free to respond to the question that I just posted. So we'll see how you guys respond back. In the meantime, though, what I have is, apart from all of this, we'll have a slide to show the pricing model for BizTalk Services. So we'll see how BizTalk Services is priced and what makes more sense for you, and we'll wrap this up with a Q&A session in the end, like Amy just talked about. So I have a lot of you that have already responded back, so thank you for that. It's mostly a technical audience, so we'll try to keep this as technical as possible. I will dive into more details. So for individuals that are functional, just be patient. There's a lot of information coming. You can either listen to this recording after it's done, or you can even follow us on the blog post that we put out at Neudesic.com. So now as far as this is concerned, right? So what we've heard from the customers is that even though BizTalk is a very robust platform, it doesn't really help the operations too much. And once the code goes live, operations takes a big hit. And they have to spend a lot of time running circles around supporting the infrastructure, supporting the application. The upgrade to the applications are hard. The service packs that are critical have to go through a lot of scrutiny because we want to ensure the applications that were developed are critical and they can't stop, right? And so customers are asking Microsoft, how are you helping the IT enterprise to support the operations functions, and how are you helping us, say, onboard new applications and new trading partners into our business, right? So apart from all of this, what we've also seen is that everybody is asking for improved performance, and what that directly results in is reduction of cost, right? So if your hardware is performing better, you need to spend less time and less money in procuring hardware. So that gives you better total cost of ownership. And apart from that, even though BizTalk 2013 is a platform, there is need for more out-of-box functionality. So developers, as we speak, are very happy with BizTalk 2013 as a development platform. But every time you implement anything in BizTalk, you kind of have to put a developer in the front and do some development. But that is something that the businesses are asking. Can you put and provide little out-of-box functionality? Can you make a configuration-driven experience that doesn't require too much coding, or maybe some parts that don't require coding at all? And that whole philosophy did not exist with BizTalk. You kind of need to have some configurations at all times. So apart from that, what I have is, what we came down to is Microsoft started looking at what can we put on the cloud, because when it comes to it, they wanted to reach the most audience possible, right? So we want to ensure that we're addressing small companies that don't require a whole bunch of hardware to very large companies that do require a lot of hardware, and growing companies, right? So we want to definitely have an elastic scale, right? So if I'm a retail, for instance, and I have a lot of EDI transactions, it probably spikes up in the holiday season. So what do I do about that? I don't want to invest in a huge hardware and cut it back down. So I want to have an elastic scale. At the same time, I don't want to be managing it. So I don't want to own it. I maybe don't want to manage it either, because if I'm managing it, I have to support the licenses, I have to support the servicing of that hardware, software, maintenance of that software, upgrades to the software, right? And then on top of that, I have to manage my application. So what I want to do is I just want to manage my application. I want to make it as possible so that if I go in, I can do most of the stuff myself, and I don't, say, get a programmer. So that reduces my onboarding costs. So all of these things typically were provided very well in the cloud. So what Microsoft did is came up with Windows Azure BizTalk Services, right? So what we get is a rich brokering and mediation platform in the cloud that is extremely elastic and managed through configuration that provides connectivity to both on-premise and cloud-based application services with an environment that is completely managed by Microsoft and fits most CIOs' SLAs, right? So that is what Microsoft that is Microsoft vision, and Microsoft hopes that it is able to leverage BizTalk services like that. So what you see in front of you right now is a preview. It is not production ready. So I want you to be careful with it, right? So any code that you put out there is not bound by an SLA. However, if at the end of this demo you should like BizTalk services, we're able to get you on a TAP program where you can definitely be in production and have an SLA that you want to and would like to support. Right? So what it gives BizTalk services on a grand scene is a better support for businesses putting the entire infrastructure on the cloud that is managed by Microsoft, right? So what you get is BizTalk services in Windows Azure Portal. So Azure Portal is maturing quite a bit and is becoming very popular, and BizTalk services is right there in it. So that does give you the ability to realize a vision that Microsoft is behind BizTalk. So if you look at all the services that are in Azure, everything is not there, but BizTalk is. So you know that Microsoft has invested in BizTalk. And just because it is managed, you can provision hardware very easily. You can deploy applications to it very easily, and it provides a very rich and extensible monitoring platform. So it's not just that the web portal is interesting and useful. What is also interesting is that Microsoft realized that, say, the trading partner management is good on the portal, but maybe that trading partner management needs to sit on, say, a SharePoint site that you host. So they provided APIs so you can look at that and you can get information down and you can actually work on it on site because you were maybe doing something else on site. And it also provides you the ability to download tracking information. So if I'm processing a lot of data through Azure, through BizTalk Services, you can download that tracking information, tracking EDI information. You can get all of that down. And also it provides support for custom code. So even though there are a lot of out-of-box functionality, you definitely have the ability to enjoy a platform that can be customized. Right, so apart from that, we also have a huge configuration-driven experience. You are able to configure most of the application that you're deploying. You're able to configure the hardware that you're deploying, but you also have the ability to create transformations and create some interfaces so that you're able to route the message through a powerful ISV bridge. Right? So if you think of an ISV that is available on Azure, it is taking messages in on maybe a queue, transforming it, routing it, so it's performing all the mediating capabilities, and it is moving it to another endpoint, right? So the transformation itself needs some sort of a bridge, and Microsoft has given us a project template that is on, so that programmers don't find it too alien to build stuff for Windows Azure, right? So you are able to build those interfaces in Visual Studio, and you are able to create those bridges that are able to communicate with your in-cloud applications. You're also able to communicate with the line of business applications. So that is what Windows Azure provides, and hopefully while we go through some of the demos, you're able to see that experience and benefit from it. So all right, so moving on from this, right? So what BizTalk is providing to us is a service in the center that is interacting with not only the line of business applications, it is also that are on-premise, maybe in the cloud, so interacting with your in-office applications, your front office, back office, any customers that are on-site, on-premise, on trusted networks. So all those messaging capabilities are provided through the BizTalk Services ESB. You also get rich capabilities to talk to institutional customers and providers, right, which are really B2B customers, which is different from EAI, right? So B2B customers would transfer documents back and forth. So you need to have robust standards, and EDI provides us that. So BizTalk Services leverages EDI infrastructure. That is a part of BizTalk 2013 in BizTalk Services also. So all those capabilities exist. And it is very interesting how Microsoft has implemented EDI. It is very similar to your experience, on-premise experience. It's all about you can onboard a customer very easily, and you can add those configurations really fast. So we'll see how B2B works, but to start out, let's go with EAI, right? So when you think of EAI, think of message-based scenario where you're transmitting messages, right? So it's an XML data stream. It is not a document that you're transmitting, and it's going over a trusted network to trusted parties, and it's a secure network, and you can look up information, you can look up database, you can translate that information fairly easily. So those capabilities exist, and that is what we hope to do in EAI. So what Microsoft did to support this is come up with an EAI bridge. So what an EAI bridge does, it gives you the ability to connect to endpoints that are either in the cloud or they're on-premise, right? So you have source that could be anywhere. You could have destination that could be anywhere, on-premise, in the cloud, and you have pipelines in the middle that are able to mediate and transform and validate those messages and move it between those two endpoints. So that is what an EAI bridge provides. Now, we have two types of EAI bridges. We have generic bridges and specific bridges. This version of BizTalk service that we have only has specific bridges at this point. There are 3 of those. There is a one-way XML, two-way XML, and a pass-through bridge. So what those does is, you have message that is going from point A to point B. Two-way is it is going from point A to point B and it's expecting a response back. And a pass-through is it doesn't really validate a message. It just passes it through because you don't care about the content inside. So that is the capabilities provided by bridges, right? So the generic bridge, which is supposed to be out of box, and we'll hopefully see that by the time BizTalk Services goes live, provides these 4 components that you see in the middle, and that is validate, enrich, transform, and enrich. But you have other capabilities that are, say, encoding and decoding, and those are implemented in the specific bridges and we'll see some of those in action today. So we'll see how we kind of work that out. But to show this whole bridge aspect, what we did is that we created a scenario in which we have 3 companies that are actually interacting with each other with messages. So it's an EAI scenario. And we have Leslie Pools and American Paints and Chemical Polymers. So Chemical Polymers has a line of business application. It's a database, a SQL Server database at this point, and it's interacting with these 2 companies, and they're going to send it purchase orders. And that is what we have to solve. So what we're going to do is we're going to put a EI bridge in the middle. So BizTalk Service EI bridge is going to receive both of those purchase orders. It is going to transform that and hopefully communicate with the line of business database. Now, to make it a little more realistic, we actually built 3 applications. So these are simple applications somewhere in the cloud. They don't know where the EI bridge is, but they probably have the address of the EI bridge, and they're able to send those messages. And the line of business application, we specifically made it a on-premise BizTalk 2013. But that is not important. What we'll do for the sake of this demo is we'll keep that stopped so you're able to see that messages go from these 2 partners to the EI bridge. We'll look at that message, we'll inspect it, and then we'll enable BizTalk, and we can see the message flow through to Chemical Polymers. So we have 2 specific types of purchase orders. So if you look at it carefully, they're signed a little differently. So there's purchase order 1. That is the namespace, and if you see the field names are slightly different from the American Paints field names, and the American Paints namespace has got PO2, so it is a little different, right? And that is going to be consumed by the EI bridge, and it's going to transform it. So there's enhance written there. It's not going to enhance it. It's going to transform the message to this canonical schema for Chemco line of business system. And if you look at the namespace, it is definitely PO, so it has got a different namespace, and it's a canonical schema that the EI bridge is going to work on, right? So the demo is going to show us the EI bridge. It is going to show us how to deploy the solution to Windows, Azure BizTalk, and the order processing scenario that I just walked through. So we'll look at that. So let me quickly switch back and run into the my RDP session that I created. So we'll just wait for that to come up. So this is Windows Azure interface, right? So Windows Azure is not new. BizTalk Services, that is the only thing that you see in the middle here. This one is, right? So the other services, if you haven't seen it, feel free to forward. Many enterprise level users, fairly straightforward and it's very powerful. BizTalk Services, unless you signed up for it, it's not really available. So if you want to play with those services, reach out to me, to Neudesic, and we should be able to kind of sign you up for some of those, and we'll see how that works out. Now, as far as this is concerned, right? BizTalk Services needs a few components in place to work. So those components are definitely a Active Directory component, and like a simple .NET application, everything runs in context of a namespace, right? And we have that here as well. So we need that. And if you look at the names, parts of that namespace that are pertinent, so I'm not expecting you to remember any of this, but just kind of bear with me. I'll show you what that looks like. And that namespace is run by a user called management client for me, and it's got a password that I'm going to try and remember. So this password is important because every time I need to talk to my application that is sitting in the cloud, and the namespace is tpgcsdns, I must know that namespace, I must know which user is hosting that, and I must have the password, and then the web-based application is able to find this instance of BizTalk service and play with it. So I'm going to save that. I already have it saved here. So you see that is a namespace that we saw before, the password for it. Apart from that, I also need a few service bus queues, right? So I said that we're going to transfer messages from trading partner to a BizTalk service, and the BizTalk service is going to transform that message and is going to transmit it to the host application, which is a line of business application hosted by Chemical Polymers, and we're going to use Service Bus, Azure Service Bus, as a transport mechanism to move the message over. So we have the Service Bus here, and if I look at that Service Bus, I've got some definition here. So Roadshow New is the name of the Service Bus, and I have a lot of queues that are deployed here, and I'm going to use this orders demo 3. So if you look down here, that is a queue URL, and I'm going to save that URL as well. Actually, the URL is already saved here, so that's the same URL. So just bear that in mind. So I've got already, I've got a namespace, I've got a message queue, and apart from that, what I also have when I set up BizTalk Services is a SQL Server database, so I definitely need that as well. So BizTalk does require SQL Server. That is hopefully not in use to anybody, but just bear that in mind. So what we'll do is we'll try to create a new BizTalk service so you know what that looks like, and we'll move on with the demo. And it takes its own time, but you'll see how uncomplicated that process is. So I'm going to click on New. I'm going to say Custom Create My Service. I'll call it Demo 002. You saw there was a Demo 001, so I wanted to make sure that it worked. I'm going to create a new database instance to do this, and I'm going to specify a database, probably a new database server. Demo 002 is the name of the user. I'll put a password which has got some restrictions, so as long as you put those restrictions in, it works out. It picks out a region, so if you are in the East US region, you definitely want to pick that because that'll make your interface that much faster, because that service actually gets hosted in that region. There are other regions available, so these are the regions where you could possibly be in and make a difference. I'm picking out East US because that is where we belong at this point. Moving on, now I have to pick the access namespace that I was showing you earlier, and I only have one namespace for now, which is okay. And management client was a user, we already saw that. And what I need to put is the access control password. So I'm going to take this password that I saved, I'm going to stick it here, and you'll see that it becomes a green check mark. This kind of check mark is hard to see, but it's green. It worked out. I'm going to create a new storage account. I'm going to call it Demo 002. Click on Next. So moving on. Now this is what secures your BizTalk environment. So this is a private certificate. So I'm going to pick a certificate that I created some time back, TPGCSD. I'm going to give it a password. Well, it already has a password. I'll just put that password in. I don't know if I typed that right, so let's do that again. Right? That's it. Right? So I have a whole bunch of details here, and it's going to continue to create this environment. So let's not wait for it. I'm going to get on with my demo. So if you remember, what we did is that we want to create a bridge that is going to get hosted in BizTalk services, in Windows Azure BizTalk services. So starts out with a Visual Studio, which could be anywhere, right? And what we get is a new project template. So if I click on File, new projects, we'll see that there's in C# there's a new BizTalk Services project template, and when I create that, I get a structure somewhat like what you see here with the empty bridge. This bridge has already been configured, but otherwise it would be empty, and it would not have any of these. And I said that we have 3 different kind of specific kinds of bridges, and that is what I have here. So what we had picked out was a bridge, XML one-way bridge, and I wanted to drop it. The bridge would transfer the message to a queue, and we'll connect these two. So let's. This live meeting, the interface is a little choppy for some reason, but let's just bear with me. And then in this bridge, I have to specify the schemas that I created. So what I already created here is some purchase orders, purchase order 1 schema, purchase order 2 schema, and I also created a map that is these 2 maps that are canonical maps, right? So let's look at purchase order 1. It looks like that, P1. There's a purchase order 2 that looks like that, and I have a map P1 to the canonical schema. Oh, let me show you the canonical schema. So the canonical schema is a generic schema that is acceptable by the line of business system, and I have a couple maps that are taking that information over from the specific purchase order to the canonical. So you saw P1, P2 is very similar. Now on the left-hand side, on the toolbox area, you'll notice all of those functions do exist, but they look different from the BizTalk mapper. So this is a significant effort that Microsoft has invested in. They haven't taken the BizTalk on-premise and reused that, right? It is important that you notice that what BizTalk has done here, Microsoft has done here, is that they have completely built a tool from scratch, and they have gotten rid of things that were probably bad practices on the on-premise version, and they have redone it here, and that has resulted in significant performance enhancements. For instance, there's C# scripting, and C# scripting there compiled code, so as opposed to it being a script what it used to be, it is compiled code now, so it works much better, works much faster. All of these maps execute better, and your information gets moved from point A to point B a whole bunch faster. So let's close all of these artifacts, because this is not new for anybody that used BizTalk before, and let's try to get to my bridge configuration that I was looking at earlier, right? So I'm able to now open this bridge, and I can say, so I want to say receive 2 different kinds of messages. So I have 3 types of purchase orders. So I can receive purchase order 1, and I can also receive another kind of purchase order. I can receive purchase order 2, right? And then I have to transform that. So I definitely want to go to the collection, and I want to pick the maps. Won't let me pick it for some reason. Just use my keyboard. Okay, so the purchase orders are picked. So this is how I configure my bridge. This is it. I don't have to tell it, route it. The messages, when they come here, they'll automatically get signed properly. They'll get validated, and they'll get transformed with the right transformation. Right. So that is the first aspect. Then I can definitely route the messages. So I can go here, and I can say, how do I want to route it? So what is my filter conditions, and how do I move it? So I can say a field name equals something, another field name equals something else. So I can create additional routes, different queues. So this is a ISV platform that you're working on, right? So you are in the end moving a message to a different queue, and maybe that comes from a different queue. So all those routes can be created. So everything that you see on the left-hand side is really designed to help you with the 3 parts of the bridge: the source, the destination, and the middle pipeline. So that is your bridge configuration. And the queue order itself is also very straightforward, right? So it has the queue name, and I think we saw the queue name a little while ago when I was showing the queue definition to you. So the queue name exists, and definitely if I open up the actual config, you'll also see that it also has the issuer name and the issuer secret. So this really allows this bridge to move a message to a queue that is somewhere else. It is part of my infrastructure, but it's somewhere else, and other people can communicate to that queue in the same way. So it could be an input queue. For me, it's an output queue, but it could, imagine this as an input queue, and anybody that has a service address, has a user ID and a password, it is able to get to that message. And in the end, the whole process is secured by Microsoft. So imagine everything that you're trying to do is hosted by Microsoft, and all of those securities do exist. So if you are on-premise and you want to talk to another BizTalk instance that is hosted by somebody else, you can have them expose an Azure Service Bus queue, and your BizTalk infrastructure can talk to somebody else's BizTalk infrastructure, and it could actually become a messaging scenario. But until now, it used to be EI and BizTalk systems used to not interface with each other really well. You had to port MQ and kind of play around quite a bit. So Azure gives you that power. So we've definitely seen that bridge. I'm not going to save it because this solution works just fine by itself. And now we need to deploy this to Windows Azure, right? So what I'll do is I'll go up to the solution just like I did before for BizTalk on cloud, BizTalk on premise, and I hit deploy. It'll build my code. Hopefully I didn't introduce any errors. So now you see that is my deployment endpoint. So let's see where was that defined for me. So if I go to, oh, you see demo 002 is still creating. It takes about 30 minutes. It told us that already. But let's go to TPG CSD where I'm trying to deploy this. And if I go to dashboard for that BizTalk service, you see how robust this is. It is giving me all statistics that I need. This is my quick glance, right? It's telling me what's going on, and I'll show you, it gives you a lot more information. But here is my service URL, right? So tpgcsd.biztalk.windows.net. So tpgcsd is name of my service. BizTalk is the part of Azure that is being exposed, and everything gets Windows.net, right? So if I was exposing something in Service Bus, it would be tpgcsd.servicebus.windows.net, right? So this is just like a naming convention. It works out great, and it also gives you the ability to, this dashboard gives you the ability to say, update your certificates, update your tracking database credentials. So remember, I picked out that PFX key. I can change that. Maybe the PFX key expired. So all of the administration of your infrastructure and security is right here. It's very user-friendly, and it's extremely robust. So going back to this right here, I need my ACS namespace. The namespace was tpgcsdns, right? And I need my shared secret again because I'm interacting with this service, and I'll need to provide that here. And if I click on deploy, it'll deploy it, and nothing else happens here. So just like your current BizTalk application deployed to your local BizTalk instance, this would actually get deployed to Windows Azure. So let's look at what that looks like, right? So I've got TPG-CSD already picked out. I'm just going to click on Manage, and this will launch my BizTalk Services portal. So it is not available even right now, BizTalk, even in production. If you signed up for it, you have it. If you don't, you definitely get in touch with us, and we can make sure we hook you up with BizTalk Services, and we'll get you on a TAP program. So that's my bridge. I deployed it. There's not much I need to do here. This is my service definition. This is my ISV layer, and the definition has been deployed. My queues are already in place. The queues get managed through a different part of the infrastructure, right? So the queues get managed from here. The services are defined. That is my namespace for the queue, roadshow new, and then I have a whole bunch of queues here. So I have that. Now, being in BizTalk service, now what I can do is I can actually run the scenario that I've been talking about. So let's quickly do that, right? So let's look at what I have in place. So I have American Paints. So what we'll do is we'll say demo 002 underscore 1001. So I'm going to post this transaction to, I'll check this box. It's just a debug thing, and I'll send it to Azure Service Bus Bridge. So it definitely launches the instance that is sending over. That's my debug message. That's a checkbox I checked, and the message got transmitted successfully, right? So now let's, you know what? I can't remember disabled or enabled. So this is my queue that was listening on my on-premise. So it already picked it up. So if I go to Chemical Polymers, I can go to the last message, and demo 002 actually showed up, right? So the message moved through Service Bus, but it looked like a bit of a magic. So let me do this. Let me stop the receive location that is listening to the Service Bus queue that is deployed in Azure. So this is BizTalk. This is not Windows Azure BizTalk service, and it is looking at the same queue, right? It's looking for messages, and it's got the owner and the issuer key, right? So it is listening to the same queue. I have disabled it, so we should be able to see messages in the queue if I run through maybe the next company. So let's close this out, and let's close out Chemical Polymers. So I don't think I need that. So let's run Leslie Pools. Let's find something slightly larger, so that so we can identify it, and I'll call this demo 002 underscore. Right, so it's got what, 6, 7 parts, maybe 8 parts. So I'm not going to check on that. I'll just send it to the Azure Service Bus queue. So it sends it, tells me that it sent it. That's just an application that we built so that it's easy to debug. Now let's actually look at the message. So I'll go to Service. I'll go to CSV demo 003, and when I look at it, the queue length is 1, right? It gives me a lot of information here. It says the current size, some more information, but it's not convincing enough that it's actually working. So I've got Service Bus Explorer. And let me launch it from beginning so you see what it looks like. So this is an MSD and download. You can get it too. This is for exploring any Service Bus queues that you have created. I've got a connection string here. So I've got the Service Bus URI. I've got the namespace, the issuer, and the shared secret. Keeps coming up over and over again, so it is pertinent. Please remember that. And if I go to CS demo 003, the queue depth is 1. So let's look at the messages in the queue. So I'll just peek it. I'm not going to draw it down. And you see this is demo 002, 50,001, and these are all of my parts. They're all listed here. So the actual message is here. So what I'll do now is I'll go back to BizTalk, and I'll enable that receive location. And what I'll see hopefully now is this queue depth should go back to 0. Let's go back to Service Bus, and let's refresh this again. So again, I just keep reminding you, this is not production. This is still a preview. So please be patient. Patient with it. The SLAs are not implemented by Microsoft. You know, if you get on it, you should realize that it is your own. So now the CSV demo 003, queue depth has become 0 again. So the message was actually picked up. So we'll go back to Chemical Polymers, and let's exit that. I think it was a prior instance. Let's minimize all of this. Chemical Polymers, and I'll go to the end. And that's demo 002 50,001, right? So you see that the message actually moved from point A to point B, right? So this is the EI demo. Hopefully it was clear enough. This session is being recorded, so we can definitely get back to it at a later point. So not overly complicated, but we can definitely cover that. Let me get back to the presentation real fast, right? So so this is what we just saw, right? So we have this, and let me post another poll. Right, perfect. So we saw that. Now we'll do the B2B demo, right? So this is where rubber meets the road. This is the big investment Microsoft has made in this EDI infrastructure, and this moves documents from customer 1 to customer 2 through a robust trading partner management system. So as to demonstrate that scenario, we set up 2 companies, New Petro and Partner 4M, and And what we're going to move is purchase orders and invoices. So purchase order go from New Petro to 4M. We'll go back from 4M back to New Petro, and all going to go through the EDI infrastructure through BizTalk Services, right? So the 810 is a reverse channel back, goes through the same infrastructure, right? So and we'll do the B2B demo now. So we'll see the partners, the agreements we set up, and how does a document transfer, and hopefully, look at some of the tracked messages too. So I'm going to exit out of this again, and let me get back to the argumentation, and let's get back to BizTalk. So let's look at the partner configuration, right? So I can quickly create a partner, right? So I can say, let's call this demo 001 or demo 002 and save it. So the partner gets created. So demo 002 is here. So when I click on it, I see and I can set up a profile for it. So each partner in EDI is identified by certain qualifiers. Dunn's number is probably the most popular, right? So we can pick that, or we can pick telephone number, which is not that popular, but Dunn's prefix, suffix is probably up there as well. Most developers use ZZ, so we'll pick that, and let's give it a value, right? So I'll hit save, and my profile is saved, right? So now, what we did before is that we already set up the partners that we wanted to. So let's look at New Petro. And New Petro has a ZZ of 6666, and we set up 4M partners that has got ZZ with 44444. So we have those two, and then let's look at the agreement, right? So the agreement that was created gets created the same way. Just click on Add at the bottom, and then you see this part where you see General Settings, where you have Partner 1 and Partner 2, and you have to pick the qualifiers and the values that you want to have here. You can say if you want to track those messages or no, and then we go to the Receive Settings, which it starts becoming a little more pertinent, right? So the transport type is HTTP, but there are other transport types that are supported, and you can pick any of the transport types, so FTP, SFTP. So SFTP did not exist before. It does exist with BizTalk 2013, with BizTalk Services as well. And an AS2, we can create an AS2 agreement in case you don't want to use a VAN vendor. We'll leave it HTTP for now. So this was created for me by default. I didn't have to work on that, right? And I can definitely promote some properties if I wanted to route the message or do special handling. So I don't have that right now. So this gives me the ability to identify how these trading partners are going to interact with each other and the transactions that are supported. So 810 and 850, that is what we talked about. You can upload more invoices. So that is a slight difference. So between BizTalk on-premise and BizTalk in the cloud, here you actually have to pick the schema and upload it. BizTalk on-premise does the same thing. You have to copy it, then you have to deploy it. So same concept, just realized differently because this is in the cloud. And there's some advanced settings that it gives you some more filter options. We didn't do any of that today. If you looked at BizTalk on-premise, this would be very relevant and it'll make sense, right? So moving on, I could definitely include some maps, which I have not done just yet. I'm just going to move a message from point A to point B through the EDI infrastructure, so we'll see what that looks like. And then I have how do I route the message. So I'm definitely using an Azure Service Bus queue, and this is if everything works out, it moves to the success queue. If everything doesn't work out, it will move to the failure queue. So the things that are pertinent is basic HTTP relay, there's web HTTP relay in case it is well, so there are different protocols that are supported, right? So all of that is available here. I'll have a queue definition as well. So it'll be a queue, and then we can definitely, once we deploy it, the messages move should move just fine. Now let's go back over to the send setting, which is how the process starts out. So trading partner 1 is moving message trading partner 2. And we have the ability to add a transform, just like on the receive side. I clicked on it, but it's not. There it is. I'm able to batch the message. It's really important, right? So when you're moving a whole bunch of messages over, you don't want to send individual transactions. Sometimes EDI provides the ability of batching multiple purchase orders. Either you can block it off on a certain time. You can block it off, say, by value, by size, or by numbers, by quantity. So all of that is available. Going out in protocol, this is very similar. So acknowledgments, again, are supported. So I can say that for every transaction that is sent, I'm expecting a tier 1 or 997 that is out of box. And then the transport configuration, which is very similar to what was on the receipt side. And here I have an Azure Service Bus queue that is able to move the message. And I've got the owner, the issuer key, and of course the success queue when it's successful. And if it fails, it should go to the failure queue, right? So what I've done for now, I'm running out of time. So I definitely want to leave some time for Q&A. So on the receive side, what I did is that for success messages, I made it a Azure, well, I didn't save it yet, but it was set to a basic HTTP relay. So I'm expecting the transaction to fail. So let's quickly see what that looks like, and we'll run it by some logging, and we'll see what happens to a message that maybe fails. So I've got some message here, and I'm going to send it using batch file. So I created a program called Message Sender that is able to send a message to Azure Service. So if you see, I've got the owner, and I've got the key here, and I've got the URL. And you saw the send URI when we were talking about it, and I'm going to send a document over. So let's quickly send this document, and so the document got sent, and I can go back over to, I actually don't have the folder, so let me quickly get the folder name of where my receive daemon processes are stored. So message receiver, so listen to success messages, right? So we don't have any success messages, and listen to failure queue. And oh, there it is. So the message actually showed up in a failure queue. So I know that the message failed. But let's quickly go back to BizTalk service, and see what happened to it. So I'm going to go to tracking, and let's see everything that was tracked. So I've run a few transactions. I ran through some EI, and I ran through some. So let's 1038 was my transaction that I ran for the EI scenario. So it has got some basic information that I'm tracking. Through EDI, the transaction failed, so I'm interested in this. So I see that the event level is error, and the activity status is, so it says that the message could not be deployed because it couldn't find the schema. So the schema is deployed, but it was a wrong queue type, so I've got some debugging to do. Right, so in the end, the message failed, but it's going through the EDI infrastructure. You see how easy it is to set all this up. And hopefully you're on with this yourself and add value to your companies. In the meantime, that is what I have for B2B scenario. So I'm going to go to this presentation and quickly run through. Sorry, I forgot to show you something else. So let me go back to here, and let's see what it did. So demo 002 is still creating for some reason. So we'll just give it a few more minutes. Hopefully it'll create. So I had the B2B demo. We saw that. And here's a pricing agreement that I promised to talk about. And this is what BizTalk Services will cost to implement. The developer edition is definitely the least expensive. It gives you the most ability, so I'd say everybody that wants to play with it, definitely sign up for this, because it's not that much, right about $50 a month. A lot of people we have a lot of EI bridges that you can deploy. You can definitely play around with EDI. The basic and standard versions don't have EDI in it, but most companies that actually want to play around with their application start with the basic version. That comes to about $249 a month, right? And there's definitely the premium version if you want to have have a robust EDI infrastructure, you need to kind of have that in place. So let's recap this presentation. So everything we saw the business service concept. So we saw EI and B2B in action. We provisioned a service, right? So we provisioned BizTalk. It is still going on, so we'll see what it did. And then I have Microsoft that is heavily investing in BizTalk. The fact that it is in Azure means Microsoft is interested in it. Not everything is in Azure right now. So I want you to collect your thoughts around that and see that it's important to Microsoft, that is important. It is important partners too, right? So it is we find it really useful because we get a lot of traction. We have a lot of customers that are interested in it, and we're already implementing this in a bunch of different places. And it's definitely a huge opportunity for both IT professionals, developers. It's very user-friendly. It's exposed through Visual Studio. So to promote this and make sure that we were able to strike up a partnership, we have this offer that it's a 90-minute deep dive that could be on-site or remote. So your goals, your challenges and opportunities, and we have a whole bunch of goals here. So this information is going to get sent out to you also. So don't feel free to not record it, but you're able to gain a lot of advantages for having this. So we can talk about it some more. We can talk about capabilities if we're on site, if we're on a phone call, so that we can answer those questions. Right. So questions or concerns. So while we have this, I'll let Amy drive that. So while that is going on, what I'll also do is just quickly go through. Oh, there it is. Demo 002 actually got created. So that's how it is. I didn't have to do anything. I've got my whole BizTalk infrastructure hosted, and I'm ready to play around with it. I can click on Manage and just have at it. So open questions. Amy?
Great. Thanks, Samar, for that great presentation. As a reminder, if you have questions, go ahead and type them in on your toolbar on the right-hand side. I did have a few questions come through. The first one being is, how does content-based routing work in EAI or EDI?
Right. So I had shown earlier, so let me go back to TPG-CSD. Right. So in the end, what I want you to realize that this is a ESB platform. So it does provide filtering, but most of those would get implemented through your Visual Studio solution, right? So what you have to do is provide your filters right here in your bridge, and you have to define how it's going to get routed. The only control you really have is who looks at those queues and where and what's the access level of those queues. So the current version of BizTalk Services is able to route messages like that. So that is EAI. For EDI, there's definitely promoted properties. I showed you that in configurations. So you can route them. But in the end, those messages, again, go to queues. So you have a message that's in a queue, and you have to route it to a different location, maybe on-premise somewhere, maybe an EI application that is hosted, maybe a line of business application. So all those adapters do exist, and Microsoft has provided us with the adapter install as well for BizTalk Services. So I can definitely provide a lot more information. Don't think we can cover that now, but feel free to reach out offline, and I can provide more information.
Great. Another question. What about ESB Toolkit usage in Windows Azure BizTalk Services?
So what about ESB Toolkit? So ESB Toolkit is a part of BizTalk on-premise, right? You can even host that, you can even install that on your instance if you install BizTalk instance on Azure. So again, going back to that, it is very important to Microsoft that BizTalk is promoted. So you saw BizTalk service. What you're able to do in Azure, and I don't know if I have that subscription level, but let me quickly click on it. So let's go back and let's look at virtual machines. If I try to create a new machine, I can go through App Services, and you see that BizTalk service? No. That is, again, just BizTalk service. But what you're able to do is you're able to create an instance of BizTalk that gets hosted, and you can install ESB Toolkit, but that is different from BizTalk service. BizTalk service is your ESB platform. that is everything you need. You don't have to, you don't need, say, exception handling. All those capabilities are hosted by Microsoft, are provided by Microsoft. So don't think of BizTalk Service as an application that you have to worry about. It's a service that is provided to you. It's like Outlook.com. It is a service. You can put another platform on it. You can put Outlook on it, and you can download messages. But you don't have to worry about Outlook.com. It used to be hot, right? So that doesn't exist anymore. So you don't have to worry about putting your own services and customizations on top of the service Microsoft is providing. Now, it is in preview, so it is going to mature. But right now, you know, what you see in front of you is what it is. ESB Toolkit is a part of BizTalk on-premise or on cloud, but not a part of BizTalk Service.
All right, great. And following that is ESB Toolkit going to be discontinued in the future?
Actually, ESB Toolkit is a part of BizTalk 2013. So it used to be a separate install for BizTalk 2010. It's a part of BizTalk 2013 on-premise. So when you install BizTalk 2013, you kind of get it box.
All right. Another one is someone did ask where they can get the content for this presentation, and we will be sending a follow-up shortly after the recording is done with the presentation and the recording. All right. Another question that came through is, if a third party is hosting a SOAP or REST-based service, what value does BizTalk add beyond just using direct communication or the Azure Service Bus to communicate with those services?
So imagine you have a service that is sitting in the cloud or it's on-premise, and you don't want to expose those through your network directly. You can definitely use BizTalk Service to actually route those messages and maintain that in the cloud, so that if the traffic goes up or down, you're able to route those messages in. You can even customize it. You can throttle those. You can say that this queue would get lower priority for your REST or your standard you know, legacy SOAP kind of services. So in the end, BizTalk Services is providing you that ESB platform that your web services don't really give you, right? So your web services are your endpoints, and your ESB layer would be your BizTalk Services platform. So you get your messages in and out, and you can expose that to the whole world very easily. And it definitely provides a lot of those capabilities. But you can definitely build your own apps. A lot of companies do that currently. So BizTalk on-premise is not trying to replace, or BizTalk Service is not trying to replace the use of BizTalk on-premise. It is really an extension. So it doesn't make sense all the time.
All right, great. And that looks like that's the last of the questions. I'm going to, actually we did just get one pop up real quick. How does the 997 functional will be sent back to the customer during the EDI transaction?
So if I have if I say that the message is going to get acknowledgement, so I'm going to quickly try and navigate to that. So let's see how fast this is. Right, so BizTalk Services, TPG CSD. So let's click on, well, actually it's already running here. So let's just go to the agreements. So now here I have the, say, receive configuration. So I'll let it load up. So please bear with me. So let's look at protocols.
All right, great.
So when I have the TA, sorry.
No, I was going to say, go ahead, keep going. It looks like we're at the top of the hour. If everyone could hang on tight, go for it. If not, we will send a follow-up. So, all right, continue, Samar.
All right, so what I have is TA1 or 997 acknowledgement, and when somebody sends a message over to my, to this URL, BizTalk Service would actually send the 997 back. I don't have to worry about it. If I go to my tracking, I'll see that 997 was acknowledged back. So that's it's fairly straightforward. I don't have to configure it or worry about it. I just have to check that box, and it's all done.
All All right, great. If there's any other questions, you can go ahead and ask them. I do have a few polling questions, and I greatly appreciate your guys' feedback if you're still on. Please rate the presentation content excellent, good, or poor. Great. And the last question I have is, would you like us to schedule a follow-up, yes or no? And again, thank you all for joining us. We will be sending out a follow-up email with a recording to this webinar. If you have any questions as well, you are free to ask them. If not, you are free to disconnect. Thank you.